Once I was driving in a car with a friend and I told him if he ran over that old lady, he would get 30 points. This was a claim made by an anonymous survey participant in a study conducted by Mark Griffiths for the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction. Hi, I'm Fred Vilches, and today I'll be talking about violent video games and its effects on Americans. Well, I pose the question, how are violent and graphic video games impacting the future generations of Americans? Well, they're being impacted through the addiction that these video games cause, the harsh mental health deficits, and the desensitization that these video games cause, as well as the altered behavior as, for example, increased aggressiveness and increased risky behavior. Now, before we talk about the rate of addiction in the United States for video games, let's first talk about the prevalence of violent and graphic video games among America. Well, according to Abigail Geiger for the Pew Research Center, 67% of gamers report that their favorite title is action and genre, which contains Grand Theft Auto 5, Devil May Cry, Ratchet and Clank, just to name a few. Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, you have to kill people, rob banks, and drive recklessly, all to succeed in the video game. Additionally, 32% of gaming teens report that one out of the 3 favorite video games is mature only in nature, which, according to the ESRB, or the Entertainment Software Rating Board, mature only stands for 18 and plus, which is concerning and shows that the ESRB is not doing enough to monitor these laws, because if that number of teens is playing the 18 plus, it's really bad. Well, now we can talk about the rate of addiction amongst Americans in video games. Well, according to Opil Turel, 3% or 2% to over 30% of gamers report that they have some sort of addiction-like symptoms, which clearly shows how prevalent video game addiction is amongst American society. Additionally, in a study conducted by Aviv Weinstein and Michael Lejoux, they found that gaming-induced cues, such as hearing your favorite video game's soundtrack or seeing your favorite video game, presents patterns similar to a drug user seeing the drug of choice or even hearing about the drug of choice. This clearly shows that video game addiction is just as much as an addiction as an alcohol or a drug addiction. And in today's society, it's not considered as one, because one might say, just stop playing video games, when it's really not that simple. Graphic images and desensitization. Well, according to the College Board provided stimuli, Gital Rahil describes the aftermath of the Haitian earthquake and the survivors' experiences. According to some of the survivors, if 500 people die, better than that for us, the rest of us of our lives suffering together. And another quote, which in simple terms describes how a person thought she was going to be comforted because they lost 3 family members, but in reality, other people lost 5 or 6, and people comforted them instead. This clearly shows the desensitization the Haitians faced while witnessing all of these deaths and violence. Because if they did not consider 1 or 2 people dying as important, and they had to go comfort the people that lost 5 or 6, this can compare to the desensitization that people face or users face when they witness violent images in video games. For example, if you witness a lot of fighting in video games and with the addiction you play every single day, it's going to become a second nature to you to fight. And when you become angry, your first resort is to fight, because you become desensitized to these emotions that you feel when fighting, and those same emotions are the ones that keep you away from fighting. But with the desensitization, there's no emotions that keep you away. Now, there's other effects from graphic and violent imagery, such as, according to Bruno Goncalves de Moleiro, violent media content influences the manifestation of aggressive behavior. This is the example I just talked about, how witnessing violent imagery, such as fighting in video games, can manifest the behavior of fighting because you believe it's normalized because you see it every day. According to the College Board provided stimuli, The Dark Side of Resilience, Derek Luss describes how adaptive competencies become maladaptive if taken to the extreme. Now, what does this mean? This means that the brain's natural instinct to trauma is to desensitize itself to avoid further stress on the body. Now, with this desensitization, it can become maladaptive because when you witness these violent imageries every day, these violent imageries such as fighting and killing become normalized to you. And of course you're not going to go out and do it, but you might not have the same reaction as someone that doesn't play these type of video games. Now, violent video games also cause changes in behavior, causes increased aggressiveness, it causes more risky decision making, and it also causes users to believe that it's still in the game. Now, these are some of the user self-report experiences compiled from a study conducted by Mark Griffiths, as we just discussed in the previous slides, for the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction. According to user Brace, a video game made him believe that he wanted to sneak up on someone. This, as we just described, was he still believed he was still in the video game, and it caused aggressiveness because a person that had not played these violent video games would not want to sneak up on a random person. According to user Korma, he played a violent video game for more than 10 hours, and when his dad came in to turn off his computer, he turned around and tried shooting him with an imaginary gun and started swearing at him. This clearly shows how desensitized he became to violence, that he wanted to turn around and try to shoot his dad. This shows that increased aggressiveness, it shows riskier behavior trying to shoot his dad, and it showed that he was still in the game because he believed his dad was another character in the game and not a real person. Now, there are some solutions to these issues, such as having stricter maturity rating laws, but the limitation to this is not always enforced. As we discussed previously with the ESRB, it's not being enforced properly because 32% of teens are playing something that is not meant for them. Another solution would be to raise awareness and provide support to those who need it with video game addictions. But the limitation is that there's many economic factors that come into play, such as having the money to pay these support systems. And the ones who are supposed to do it, which are the video game companies, never will, because it will cut into their profits and they will take away gamers from their companies. Thank you for your attention.
All right, Fred, 2 questions for you. First up, back up. How did you handle the differing perspectives as you went through your research in order to come to your solution?
Well, there's a lot of different perspectives, especially from blog posts. Like sources are incredible that are saying that video games are the new learning, and that video games are really useful when it comes to like real world experiences. But in reality, people shouldn't be experiencing killings and fighting on a daily basis. So I use that to reinforce my conclusion that they're not being enforced properly.
Okay. And how did you use the conclusions and questions of other people to advance the research you did?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How did you use the conclusions and questions that people brought up from others to help you do your research?
Well, the conclusions brought up by others was that it's not as in the early stages of being tested, and that video games still don't have like a proven negative effect. But I use that to use parts of the conclusions of people saying that there might be potentially some reason. I use those reasons and combine them all together to provide a more solid conclusion.